All right, man. Well, ready to cook whenever you are. I'm really pumped that we lined this up and made it happen. I'm really glad you reached out.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you've been doing a lot lately, so I thought it'd be interesting to try to bring you on and see what's up. But yeah,
Yeah.
we're recording. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah,
I'm
thanks for
here to
having me.
grill you. I am here to grill you and make sure that everything is medium rare by the time of the end of it.
Let's go. Let's get well done. Yeah. I'm
Well, if it gets
excited
well
to
done, then I
yeah.
will be cooking you the entire time. And I don't know if that's necessarily the most polite way to host a
We'll go
particular
back and
show.
forth. I would love to
How's
actually
your
start
leg,
real
by the
quick.
way? What happened with
Getting
your
better.
leg?
So I snapped my ACL in half and injured my MCL. So I had to have surgery on April 1st to have it all rebuilt, which was crazy because my drummer broke her right foot within a week of me tearing my ACL and having surgery. So we were both crippled. We made some content about that, like, oh, when you're in a band and you're over 30, which was pretty funny. Um, we just had a show on Sunday, so 6 days ago.
Pop punk just
Um,
punishes you for like not being a teenager making the music anymore.
Yeah, well, I think pop punk usually originates if you're, at a skate park and you're in high school with your buddies and that sort of thing. So it definitely has that energy in its roots. And then you get old and your knees don't work. Um, no, but we just did a show about a week ago tomorrow, and it went surprisingly well from my knee perspective because I was able to like rock out, jump around a little bit, and
hmm
my knee was not screaming at me. So I would say recoveries, we're getting there.
Okay,
Um,
sweet.
yeah,
Well, how was it? How did it feel the day after, though? Curiously,
you just lagged out, but can you hit me with that question one more time?
how did it feel the day after the show?
Surprisingly good. I was expecting to have to ice my knee the next day and just be sitting around, elevating my leg. It felt fine. There was nothing out of the ordinary. So I think I'm getting past the halfway point of healing to, oh, we're actually making good progress and we're getting back to, regular joint health. So life is good.
Yeah, well, no pain, no art, though. That's the reality of it. So,
I need to write a song called Crutches or
crutches.
carry me, hobble. I don't know. Got some options.
I mean, you could probably do something with it. You could probably
Yeah.
do something with it. Because then you
So
can
I
make
do have
content about all my leg is broken and everything, and then it
yeah.
inspired the song, and then you can do the classic Indian thing, like I turned my pain into art. You
But
know,
my leg is broken, but not my heart. Something like that.
yeah,
I'm healing
the cheesier the
emotionally.
better. You know.
I'm only physically broken. Yeah, there's actually I have a big soft spot in my heart for writing overly cheesy lyrics, and those are not the kind of lyrics I would ever release with soft stone hearts. But I will write songs about anything. It's just a really really fun outlet, and then Jess and I have really locked into the kind of songs we'll develop and pursue together. No, I'll write the dumbest, cheesiest lyrics you've ever heard all the time.
At what point did Jess join you in doing Softstone?
Um, we were on. It was actually before we went pop punk, but we were exploring with like blues, folk rock.
Mm.
This was years ago. I think Jess joined the band before the COVID lockdowns, before COVID blew up. So it was a while back. Um, but we needed a new drummer. Our drummer had left the band on good terms, but that drummer had left, and then I met Jess through I had never met Jess before she tried out, but I had a network of some musicians I reached out to just asking if anybody knew a drummer. And I don't know, like when I met Jess, we had a bass player in the band at the time, but the bass player and I both felt that Jess was a really, really good creative fit for us. Um, that's the big thing for me. Like, I don't care how talented somebody is, if they are a pain to work with creatively, then I don't know.
What
You know,
what stood out about Jess? Specifically that made you go with her as opposed to others.
it was a long time ago, so I don't remember exactly how I came to this conclusion, but it was a conversation with John, my bass player, saying she feels like a good creative fit. Like we would like to write songs with her. And she had a really, really chill vibe. Um, this is not true for every musician, but some musicians have really big egos. And it's really hard to work with them. But if you have somebody where you can tell, I can communicate with this person and we can give each other honest feedback, there is really no other way to level up than being able to give honest feedback and communicate with the people that you're creating with.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that was definitely huge. And sometimes there's just an X factor with somebody that you had. There's just a creative X factor where you connect with somebody, and there's really not an explanation for it. But I'll throw, hey Jess, here's a voice memo of a song I'm working on, or a scratch recording I'm putting together. Here's a chorus, and then she'll bounce back. Oh, I've got these ideas. Change the snare to this. Change the hi hat to this, and I'll do it, and it works. And we'll ping pong. That gives me an idea.
Mm.
So I'll change the song a bit more, and I'll ping pong it back to her. It's just a good back and forth. And we felt that pretty quickly. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, let's back up a second. At what point? I mean, you've been doing music for a while now. I think you started off like doing stuff for your church or something like that, and then you started doing your own thing. Or how far back do we gotta travel in time in order to see? Oh, this is what I want to start doing now.
Yeah. So before I answer that question, I have one for you, and that's just to kind of give
Oh,
me a little bit more context as we, continue through this episode. But I've known you for a while, even before you started this podcast. So give me, it's kind of for the audience, but also to give me context on how to answer as you come on as the host. What is your background creatively that you're bringing to the podcast?
well, so the purpose of the podcast really I like to approach is that there's always this weird mix of variables that go into when not just when we're conceptualizing things for creativity, it's the nature of creativity in and of itself. So I guess
Mm,
it's somewhat of a philosophical endeavor, which it doesn't always tend to go that way. But my personal interest is, the nature of creativity, and the little branches that sort of spring out from it. That results in the art that people, the artists actually end up making. And so you can kind of reverse back engineer through their art to actually figure out what in the world is going on, on a
mm,
more fundamental
yeah.
level. And that's more my personal interest because, if when I'm talking, you might
Huh.
remember when I was talking about like an occasion, the last film that I did, that it was, the topics that sort of dealt with, there was a lot of why, behind something very deep, like the nature of regret itself. And
Mm.
although I was only able to like cut it down to a short and everything, um, when I was
Where
able to
can
at
I
least highlight what?
where can I watch that?
Oh,
Because
it's
I've wanted to see an occasion for time for it,
yeah,
for
it's
years.
been a
As you
while.
talked about it, it's legendary. Even if it's a short film, I really want to experience this. I wanna watch it.
Well, I put it up on the Myers Films YouTube, but also there's multiple links like on my Facebook and also on my Instagram, where I
S-
posted about it.
Send
So
me a link.
okay, yeah,
Send over a link after
I'll
this.
send you a
I'll
link.
watch it tonight. Yeah,
But
thanks,
the
buddy.
the nature of creativity, I think, is kind of at the heart of everything, and there's never one response, because we don't know necessarily why we're creative. And I think honestly, it
Yeah.
starts off with a kid being absolutely bored, and then he tried to take something in reality and then manipulate it into something that was more
Hmm.
interesting. So I think it's ultimately born out of boredom, is where
Okay.
creativity comes in. And so we find that the more things in reality that we can mess with, the more entertaining it actually ends up
Can
becoming.
become the more
Yeah.
you master each facet of this craft. I relate to that, but I'm gonna take it from a different angle. I don't. So instead of telling you when I started making music, I'm gonna talk to you about why I got into it, and I think that'll get to the when. Um, but I fully agree, except for me growing up, some of the classic pop punk bands and rock bands really of the 2000s really just resonated with me. Where I don't know. I grew up listening to Sum 41, Reliant K, Yellow Card, All Time Low. I'm going to say a little bit of Blink 182, but I actually didn't get into them until I was a little bit older. But there was just something about these bands that resonated with me. And at the time, when you're growing up, when you're a preteen or you're a young teenager, you're developing and processing a lot of emotions for the first time, and you don't necessarily have words for them. Now I do, but at the time, the bands I was listening to and the songs they were writing, I was able to resonate. Okay, I'm feeling this and I don't have words for it. And it helped me really get through that in a way that I felt like that era that I felt was a productive way to process it. And what got me into playing guitar, songwriting, eventually singing, and then being in Soft Stone Hearts and fronting a band is I wanted to be able to write songs about what I was going through, processing, thinking about just things that resonated with me, and then hopefully, give at least one person the words to process what they were going through or the feeling of like, I'm not alone or I can get through this. So it was something where that was given to me by other bands when I needed it. And I wanted to, and the whole reason that I got into music was because that struck, no pun intended, struck a chord with me, and I wanted to give that back to others. So I formed my first band when I was 15 years old, and man,
Classic
it's
time
just
for
been
pop punk, you know.
classic time for pop punk. That band was actually a metal band, believe it or not. My first,
Oh,
it wasn't screamo, but it was definitely hard rock at the very least, which was cool. Soft Stone Hearts I formed in 2016, 2017, and it's evolved a whole lot. But yeah, the whole reason I've been doing music since I was 15. That was when I formed my first band, and I started writing songs when I was 12. And
how bad
Soft
was your
Stone
first
Hearts,
song?
terrible. Even the first songs I released through Soft Stone Hearts, I look back and think, oh man, I can't believe like I wrote that. But the encouraging thing, and you probably feel this as well and resonate with this for maybe the first films you made or the first creative projects that you made, but I had to start there to get here.
For sure, yeah.
So I'm really glad that I was willing to put myself out there and release songs that now I would look back and say they're a little cringy, but you don't get better at something until you just take the first step. So
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
yeah.
you know, I wonder how many artists never happened because there were people who were too afraid to like take the first steps and just admit that they were going to be bad to start with, you know.
You know, I was talking to somebody literally yesterday who told me, like, hey, I go to open mics, I write poetry, and I'll read it at open mics. And I really respect that because even if it's not what I do, like I write songs, but I'll go play at open mics. Even now, I'll play shows, I'll release songs. There are there are so many people who want to be creative and don't create, and there's
Mm,
so many people who are creative but they create privately. And there are a lot of people who do put themselves out there. I'm not saying there's any shortage of that, but think of how many people are too afraid to put themselves out there or even start because you don't want to look foolish, you don't want to be bad at something. Um, but
well,
I think
also
life's
to
too
reveal
short.
an
Yeah,
aspect of yourself, though, you know, because
yeah,
when you create something, it's like, hey, here's part of me, you know, and so
yeah.
you're literally throwing that part of you out into reality, and you know, nobody wants to be rejected necessarily, unless
Nobody
you're a
wants to
glutton
be
for
rejected.
punishment, you know, unless you're
No,
a glutton
no.
for punishment.
I think very few people would release a short film or do a photo shoot and edit the photos and post them or write a song and hope for negative feedback. I want everybody to love the songs that I write, but it's freeing to know that not everybody is going to, and you accept that. And then you write for the people that are going to resonate with your art. You write for the people that will creatively lock into what you're doing. And, you know, if you are getting hate, that means people are seeing what you're doing and at least they're engaging with it even if it's kind of negative, but
Hmm. When
it's
did
part of the game.
Soft Stone Hearts start to amalgamate and actually become a thing?
You kind of went in and out there. I didn't hear what you asked.
Okay. When did Soft Stone Hearts first start and actually become a more cemented thing that you were trying to do?
Yeah, so I went through a period of time where I was sitting there, and this is really before I had recorded any music. I had done classic rock cover band with some friends. I had formed some bands before, but it was more jamming together, maybe playing one or two gigs. I didn't know what I was doing music wise, and I still don't. But I figured a lot of things out. At that time, I was sitting there like I really want to be doing music, but I don't have a band. So like I'm gonna play guitar. That's what I want to be doing, and I want to write songs and play shows. But like, where do I meet a drummer? Where do I meet a bass player? Where do I meet a vocalist? This is so hard. And eventually, I just had this moment where like it just clicked mentally, and I said, I want to be playing rock music, but I'm not. I don't have a band. What I can do is I can find a producer. And at the time, I didn't know the difference between an audio engineer or a producer. I didn't know. But I can go find somebody to record with. I can record a singer songwriter folk pop EP. And if I ever have a band, we could make these songs rock. But if I don't, I can at least do gigs by myself. And it's not what I want to be doing. But at least I'm taking a step forward. And when I started taking action and moved towards that, that's when I started networking with other musicians, meeting people who had a similar vision. And it did take a couple steps to get Soft Stone Hearts from me writing acoustic songs in my bedroom to being a pop rock band. But it wouldn't have gotten there if I hadn't been willing to take some steps, not knowing what the ending was, and just
Hmm.
being willing to take some action and make things happen. Um, yeah.
Well, when you first started, producing some things, just on your own, how did you start plugging yourself into the scene as sort of a solo artist to try to start, at least networking to see at least what was out there?
Yeah. I got really lucky. So I had been writing a couple songs, and then I so how did I get onto the scene? Ask me the question one more time. I'm kind of processing what you had just asked.
How did you first start plugging yourself into the local music scene to start networking as a solo artist once you had some work down?
Yeah. So first, I knew what I wanted to do, and I had started writing some songs, so I had some vision and knew what the next steps were I wanted to take, which helps because you can show up and at least articulate where you want to go and what you're working on. My buddy Luke had just graduated from music school in a conservatory for the fiddle, and we were just having dinner, catching up. It had been a while, and he showed me some of the songs he'd been writing. He played my guitar because people that go to music school play every instrument, even if they majored in one. So he was showing me some of his songs. They were really good. And I showed him some of my songs and explained to him a little bit about what I was trying to do, what my vision was. And he said, "Oh, my buddy just graduated too. And guess what? He knows how to record music. Maybe you should talk to him. He's really good at taking starting ideas and developing them into finished products. So go work with him." So I reached out to this guy. We chatted on the phone for a little bit, and he ended up helping me record, really recording my first EP that I ever did. And looking back, I had no clue what I was doing. I don't think he even does music anymore. I think he renovates houses now, which is crazy.
Oh,
Um, but so
side
that
quest.
the start was, yeah, the start was my buddy just plugging me in with somebody who knew how to record, and that was what I needed to get started. From there, man, I just network my tush off. Go to open mics, talk to everybody, play shows, talk to the other bands, talk to the sound guy. Um, Facebook groups, anything you can really do, even agreeing to be on a podcast. This is new for me. Not being willing to put myself out there and try to meet other creatives. But yeah, I just saying yes to every opportunity and not being afraid to go sing in front of people at an open mic and play for strangers. And
What kind of
you
like
never know
people
who you're
did you
gonna meet.
meet though? Like when you were putting yourself out there? Because I've
Yeah,
noticed, at least, I mean, filmmakers, they kind of tend to fall into like 3 or 4 different personality types. But with music, you get the full spectrum of all creativity. I don't know why this is, or maybe I just need to get out more. But I've been getting out more lately, and so like I feel like I've at least seen and talked to like a number of filmmakers. Like you fall into like 3 or 4 different types. But with music,
yeah,
you got everything. It's like, all the flavors of, the autism spectrum. Also, creativity has its own spectrum of different types of people. And, music is where you'll see the fullest, wavelength of all the different types of people coming in. So, like, when you were first, talking to people, how did you decide that, oh, this is like somebody I think their advice might be valuable? Maybe, there's something that about this person I'd like to maybe network with? Because how did you start
yeah.
filtering through those experiences as an artist?
I mean, I don't know if I necessarily filter. I
You
will
like it raw.
network I'll network and talk to anybody, really, which is great. if I'm going to take somebody's advice, I have to respect your creativity or respect your work or professionalism, if that makes sense. So if I'm working with somebody who is really, really good at production and they give me advice on how I should or shouldn't sing for different takes, I'm going to take that a lot more seriously than somebody who comments on one of my videos saying that my singing and lyrics are bad. Okay, cool. Like this random person on the internet versus somebody who actually knows something about music and has a body of work that I respect. So if I can see that you know what you're doing creatively and you are on a creative journey and ideally like you're ahead of where I'm at, I will really give you the time of day. And I think it would be wise for me to listen to you. But if you don't, then I can't. There's going to be a lot of conflicting advice I would have to take if I gave everybody the same weight.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more do I want to be like you creatively, even if I want to be more of a songwriter than a filmmaker or a producer? If the answer is yes, and I respect what you're doing creatively, then I will give a lot of weight to what you tell me.
Does your creativity thrive more in collaboration or solitude?
You cut back out again. What was the question?
Does your creativity thrive more in solitude or collaboration?
I think getting the ball rolling and maybe in some cases dialing in the ending really thrives in collaboration. But if I have an idea and it started and I know where it's going, I've just got to give it the time to stoke the fire and develop it. I tend to thrive writing those songs and developing those songs in isolation. I just have to buckle down and let the song tell me what it wants to be.
Mm. So you're kind of ambidextrous in that way.
Yes, the funny thing about songwriting, I've never met a songwriter where they say this is my process. They every songwriter I've met, me included, will tell you here's what my songwriting process is sometimes, but it's always different. So sometimes I'm gonna thrive by myself the entire songwriting process. There are songs that I have written all the way through in collaboration. I can tell you what works most of the time is usually I will get ideas better with other folks, or I have an idea established and then I will bounce off, does this work? I'm between these two or three creative choices, which one's the best? And getting another pair of eyes is helpful. Getting someone else's thoughts if I'm hitting a speed bump creatively is really, really helpful too. But I mean, the honest truth is it depends. It depends on the song, the part of the process. It depends on the person I'm writing with. It really depends. It's very situational, which is
Mm-hmm.
not a very satisfying answer, but that's the truth. You know, creative. I am chasing creativity with a bucket, trying to catch the drops that it's giving me. Um, it's not something where I really have a choice and I can make creativity do what I want. I'm very much at the mercy of creativity to tell me what to do
I
most
forget
of the time.
who said this, and it might be Rick Rubin, but I think he said, "Art and creativity is a muse that doesn't like to be stared at." You know, it's something
Mm,
that you can't exactly bend to your will. It's more like something you have to listen for and wait for
it's
it
a
to
good
say
word.
something. You know,
And
and
I think
there's two
go
types
ahead.
of arts. I think that it kind of boils down to there's there's an experience, and then there's a statement.
Hmm.
And then the vast range of everything falls in between one of those two, those borders, experience and it being a statement. And I think artists who like to create an experience primarily, they tend to be more collaborative. But artists who are really thinking about a statement, they tend to be more um, they tend toward solitude a lot more, and because they have to think through all of the different avenues about exactly the why, the what, the how of their art piece being able to deliver a particular message, as opposed to the very other end of the spectrum where you just really want to feel something. And feeling is kind of this symbiotic network that happens unconsciously when creatives get together. But
It's
that's just my
interesting.
take.
I unconsciously when creatives get together. Well, I think to what you were saying earlier about creativity being a muse that doesn't like to be stared at, there's an element of creativity that I just can't control, but I do know that the more I do it, the better I get. And I
Hmm.
do know that if I sit down and I write music for 10 minutes a day, the more opportunities I give myself within the context of writing and creating, the more work I will create and the better work I will create. So there are principles I can follow to give myself opportunities to get lucky, to give myself opportunities to be struck by inspiration. Nothing is guaranteed. Hard work guarantees nothing, but a lack of it definitely does guarantee something.
Hmm.
It guarantees that you will get nowhere. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's this weird symbiote, like I don't know, just relationship between I can't guarantee outcome, but I have to put in effort anyway, and then wait for creativity to come in.
Well, something I
I don't
think
know.
about a lot is getting into the flow state, because we have those experiences where everything's just clicking, it's just rolling, and it's
Hmm.
just one thing after the other, and you just feel like completely in sync with all the things that have been going on in the back of your head, while you're just doing random everyday stuff.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it all just comes out all at once. And that happens when you're in the flow state. And, one of the things that
You
I
know,
like to ask
I
artists about is how they get into the flow state.
I was so obsessed with the flow state when I first started songwriting because there were a few times when I got into it and it made songwriting so much easier. But I was almost viewing the art of creating as a task to be completed. I even
Mm,
read Flow, I think by Nihai Csikszentmihalyi. I'm butchering the author's name, but I read the book that this scientist had written on what the flow state is and how to get into it. Now I don't even care if I'm in the flow state, man. I'm asking myself, is this song fun? Do I vibe with it? Do I like it? Like, what is this song trying to be? The questions I'm asking and not even consciously, but just what the way I approach writing a song is so much different than feeling a need to complete something. It's feeling like I want to work on something that is enjoyable that I want to share with other people. Um, is it a vibe? Is it a moment? Is it an experience? Is this fun to listen to? And if I get into the flow state, great. But ultimately, to me, that is not an end or a goal within itself. But if I write something that's fun, if I write a song that people want to listen to, a song that I'm excited to share, that is a goal. That is an end. And if I get into flow state to help me achieve any of those, that's
mm.
great. But if I don't, I don't need it.
Well, there
So
are
I really
some
haven't
things I
thought
think
about the
that,
flow state in a long time.
yeah, well, there's some things that I
Yeah.
think that can, like a lot of artists can certainly benefit from, like in terms of there are some qualities like for me, I'm not going to be able to say this exactly, but like I can tell you exactly from my experience.
Yeah.
I do my best writing, for example, when uh, when I have all of my responsibilities taken care of, because I realize if there's my house right before I start like actually trying to sit down and do a writing session, it gets clean, and then the laundry gets done, because I
Hmm.
realized when my house is a mess and I have these things in the back of my mind that are just like, oh, it needs to be done, I don't feel free, and the feeling of freedom is the most important
Mm.
ingredient, I think, in order for an artist to be able to actually produce anything, or at least to be able to be willing to listen to, the muse who doesn't want to be stared at. And
What I'm what I'm getting from you, and you can tell me that I'm completely off. This is just the impression I'm getting. But maybe for you as someone who works on film, you operate out of a very specific technical set of skills where you can sit down and produce. And to not have other things for you to do frees you to focus on this work that is task and process oriented, but doesn't necessarily have the same tangible outcome immediately as cleaning your apartment or going to work. For me, songwriting is a lot more focused on, okay, this idea struck me based off something I'm feeling now or was feeling recently, or I misunderstood this interaction or had this weird thought. But wait, that would make a really good song lyric. So for me, it's not even about freeing up my mental RAM to be more oriented towards the task of creating. It's being in tune with myself and my experience day to day, so that way I can catch moments and feelings and thoughts that could be expanded upon into a song or into a piece of a song or into a creative experience. And if I'm too focused on my phone, or I'm just not focused enough on what I'm feeling and I'm just letting things go on autopilot and I'm not tuning in and living in the moment, I'm missing creative elements. But even if I have a long to-do list, but I'm sitting in the moment and I'm sitting with myself, I can get some song ideas and then jot them down and finish them later when I have that capacity. I don't know. Does that seem the same, or does that seem like we have just different creative approaches based on the crafts that we're pursuing?
I would say probably we're the same, but we have different weaknesses that make us not feel free. And we have
Mm,
different things that we have to do in order to make us feel free enough in order to actually have those experiences or those thoughts where they just come through fluently, almost like, it's
yeah.
when you're being creative, it doesn't feel like you're producing. It feels like you're just relaying something that is happening from somewhere else that you can't really explain, and then you're the messenger. But
Yeah.
everyone, because it has to do with, like, I think honestly just different people, different personalities, and um, different personalities have different weaknesses because those different personalities have a different they have a different comfort zone,
Yeah.
and in order to get into that comfort zone, it requires different things.
Yeah. I think for me in my comfort zone, if I know what I'm trying to create and I know what that feeling or that thought is that I want to share and expand upon, then I feel very comfortable because I know what I'm developing. And to me, that's more important than feeling like my to do list is free, so that way I am free to sit down with my time and write songs. It's to know what I'm writing about, and then I'll
Mm.
make time for it. But I think you're absolutely right. There has to be a sense of here's why I'm here, a sense of freedom, a sense of an ability to lock in and be led by creativity in that respect.
Hmm. Well, the other ironic aspect of creativity is that it does require some type of discipline in order,
Mm-hmm.
which is completely counterintuitive to the nature of it, because creativity by nature is really spontaneous. And then I think the discipline aspect comes from being able to build an environment as well as a schedule that permits the most amount of opportunities possible for those types of experiences in our heads to be able to happen. And like people like I forget who's the author. I'm thinking Stevens. It's not Spielberg. It's Stephen King. He
Mm-hmm.
writes an unearthly amount of books and does an unearthly amount of writing in a single day that I cannot possibly comprehend. But that's his one goal and his focus.
Yeah.
But he's very disciplined about it. He says, I have to do this by the end of the day, period. And then he produces some of his greatest works that way. And, he runs really, really well off of that. And artists sometimes, I think, don't, they underestimate the amount of work that they will be able to get done if they are disciplined. Because I think the crux of creativity is that it's really seductive. It's really seductive because it's so pleasurable to experience when it spontaneously happens. And they kind of rely on that spontaneity a little bit too much. And I think that's where, discipline is certainly, I think, something artists can benefit from more if they try to pursue it instead of creativity, ironically. Because
Yeah.
creatively, we're naturally creative. We're spontaneous in that way. So adding that other axis
Yeah.
of it, I think it unleashes it.
There is a book that if you haven't read, you should read. It really hits on this. It's called The Spark and the Grind. And it talks sometimes you got to grind your spark, sometimes you got to spark your grind. You need to give creativity room to be spontaneous, but you have to grind out processes that will help you create good work. Because the best way to get past writer's block is to write. That's just how you beat it. You're not going to sit around waiting for lightning to strike you in the head and write something good. That's when I write my best songs. But when I sit down and I force myself to write and try to be inspired, what I write is most likely going to be really bad. But it puts me in a state mentally where throughout that day and throughout that week, I am more open to good inspiration that I can use.
Yeah, inspiration is the thing I think creatives crave the most, because it's like that. It's similar to the feeling of when you first fall in love or something like that. It
Yeah.
has that onset that just completely overwhelms you, at least for a very, very brief moment. And then whatever happens after that, tends to skew toward the term, I would say, seduction, where it's like, okay, well, keep coming over
Let's keep
here,
going.
let's
I
keep
wish
going.
I wish I could tell you how I get inspired. That is what I can't control. I can tell you my creative process all day, or
We would
rather what
love
it
to be able
can
to
be.
control it, though,
It's
if we
always
could.
different. But inspiration is something where I look for it and I open the door to creativity so inspiration can walk in through the open door. But inspiration is something where, man, that is my muse. I don't know if I'm ever going to understand inspiration.
Tell me a little bit about your songwriting process. How do you make a song feel fresh when pop punk is somewhat repetitious by nature? It's a little bit of an oxymoron, but it really isn't.
Yeah, sometimes the idea would be to take a song and run with it and let it be what it wants to be. I think with letting go, that was the fastest I've sat down, written the song, and said, cool, and then taken it to the studio and then recorded it all within, I want to say, 2 months. And then I have songs like I Guess, where I first started writing that song years ago, forgot about it in a voice memo because I thought the lyrics were stupid, showed it to one of my friends during a song co-writing session, was told the lyrics actually resonated and were good, reinvestigated the song, came to it with fresh ears. Then I rewrote part of it to where in the second verse, it kind of almost goes into a rap rock portion before the chorus comes back. That is both more of a modern take, I would say, on music, and at the same time, very fresh in terms of maybe pop punk. With that, though, Jess and I pull in, we ride the line between pop music and then rock, where like heavier pop, where people will hear us on Instagram and say, "Oh, that's pop punk. You guys are pop punk." If you go back to classic pop punk music, I think we're very different. If we were having an honest conversation, and even if we have one now, I wouldn't describe us as pop punk. I would
Okay.
say Soft Stone Hearts is heavy alt pop, or maybe arguably pop rock. I'm not going to argue with anybody who says that we're pop punk. If they like pop punk music and they like us, more power to you. But to answer your question, when we're drawing from different styles and we're pulling in different genres, I think we naturally will chase different creative elements and blends that feel fresh, or at the very least, interesting and authentic to the song that we're writing and recording.
Oh, okay. How do you filter through bad ideas when it comes to collaborating with Jess?
At this point, I feel that I've really developed my internal filter where if an idea is bad, I will catch it fairly early. And I've developed an intuition for what is worth working on. I will start probably 10 or 11 songs for every one or two good ones that I really pursue and develop. There's a secondary filter where I send them to Jess, and whatever we end up working on is not only more likely to be good, but it's something we can really meet each other with creatively. There are a lot of songs that Jess will either send to me or I'll send to her, and we end up not really developing them. And I think I haven't really thought about that too hard, but on the surface, I would say there's a natural interplay there where if there was more going on creatively in our collaboration, that song probably wouldn't have fallen off and gotten forgotten about.
Mm.
Now, maybe my filter is a little too strong, where I caught I Guess in that filter and thought it was bad for a long time before I came back and realized that this song had a lot of potential. So
Has that
maybe the
external
question,
filter that you've developed with collaborating with Jess
mhm,
affected your internal filter when you're working on things by yourself? or have they stayed pretty separate?
I will still write a lot of songs, and I will let my ideas be unfiltered in private and be bad, be cheesy, be way off kilter from what I would normally release because I like to be writing and creating. The difference then becomes, would this make sense to release with Soft Stone Hearts? Is this a song that would be worth pursuing and developing? And I will send Jess a lot of ideas that are way off. And I will often tell her, this is way off from what we would probably want to work on, but I wanted to share it. I think the real question is not my filter for bad songs, but my ability to take an idea and say it's not bad. This is worth working on, because I would usually default to saying this song is not something I want to pursue and develop and release. My default is to say this song is just for fun. The song is not good. It's not a good reflection of what we want to do creatively. And it takes a lot for me to really believe in a song and want to develop that further and release it and have that be part of our body of work.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe my standard for that is pretty high. I'm not afraid to work on a bad idea.
Well,
When I release
I'm
something, I want it
terrified
to
of
sound
it.
cool. I
When
want it
I'm
to make
writing,
somebody feel
I'm
something.
terrified of it. Like, but I'm like when I'm going to sit down to write, generally I have a pretty good mapped out idea of
Yeah.
the different structures that I kind of want to follow. But sitting down and just free flowing it is not something that I'm great at. I have to when I'm sitting down to write, I have thought through this script a billion times and like rewritten it and written and rewritten it in my head. And then I sit down to try to write the final version, because there are some writers that try to
Yeah.
write the first draft and they're like, it's just the first draft. I'm like, why are you sitting down to write the first draft? I can do the first draft in my head pretty clearly. Why would you spend that time doing the first draft when you can kind of get through it in your head? But not everyone's like
Well,
that. I'm not saying I'm
I
great
think
for it. It's just the fact that it's just how my brain works.
Well, I think it takes a level of experience to get there, because for me, I let the song speak to me as I'm writing it and tell me what it wants to be. I'm sure there are plenty of songwriters and musicians who would sit down and say something similar to you. Yeah, I know what the song is going to be in my head. Why would you sit down and write the draft and let it speak to you? Those script writers are probably sitting down and developing what the concept is as they write the first draft, and then they can go back and make changes. If you've got the concept in your head, you don't need that. That's not
Right.
me.
Yeah.
Like I typically, again, there's no hard and fast rule, but typically I have to sit down with one idea, develop it, see what the point of view is, what the angle is, what else there is to explore, and I'm trying not to forget the idea that's in my head. And then not only am I incapable of developing it further while I'm trying so hard just not to forget what the melody and lyric line is, but even if I know I have that locked in, I have to sit down and give it room to breathe. I have to take it off of my conscious mind and get it on paper to give my brain room to explore the concept more fully. So
It
it sounds
sounds
like we're different in that respect.
Yeah, it sounds well. If I can attempt to paraphrase you, it sounds like you're very sensory oriented. You have to get down there and actually start messing with the thing. You got to feel it, you got to smell it, you got to hear it in order to actually, you got to sense the texture of what you're trying to mess with. And the more you feel it as you're working with it, then the more you realize what you want to do with the thing. So you're very kind of like, it's almost like first person, as opposed to like where I'm kind of thinking more third person and I'm sitting in the background kind of like, okay, what about all these
Directing.
things? And
I
you're
have
like
to
in
get
the
it.
first person.
I have to get it out of my brain and feel it in my gut.
Well, now I'm hungry.
Go grab some pizza after this, buddy.
uh, but yeah, no, creativity is one of those things that it's a fun mystery to try to figure out. And then as soon as you think you figured it out, it's like, all right, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to switch things up on you. And you're just like, I thought I figured you out. And it's like, well, you did. Now I'm going to change.
And I think part of that is leveling up too, where when I was writing my first batch of songs, which my writing has changed and evolved so much, thankfully, I'm glad I'm not writing songs at the same level I used to. But creativity and inspiration have changed. the way I find them, the way I write has shifted quite a bit, and that's good because it means I'm changing, I'm growing, I'm evolving, and my skill set around songwriting is shifting and changing and evolving. It's effervescent. But that means I'm on this constant change where I want to level up. I want to write better music. I want to write better lyrics. I want to find new angles to explore and new things to try. And I mean, that just means I'm going to have to find inspiration in new places. My creative process is going to be different,
Hmm.
which is not predictable, but that's part of the adventure. Half the fun.
Tell me a little bit about your delve into at least light content creation, just to be able to market the music itself, because that's something I've thought about
Oof.
too.
Yeah.
But like, I don't like. Do I have the time for that? Would I want to invest the time for that? It's just because you have to put yourself out there a little bit more, maybe as a music artist, than maybe you do as a filmmaker. Because a filmmaker is like, I'm going to go work on this thing for a really long time, and then I'm going to come out, and then hopefully it like causes a proportional shockwave to the amount of work that I put into it. That's sort of the bet you make as a filmmaker. But with
Yeah.
artists or like a music people, maybe you got like an album with 12 songs on it or something like that. It's like, okay, you're more like a fully loaded magazine where I'm trying to like fire a missile.
It's interesting. We actually don't really do albums. I would love to get signed to a label or get management, have enough funding that we could sit down and record a full length album. We will do a number of singles every year because that is what Jess and I can afford to do.
Mm.
And we will push each single as hard as we can. But with that, as I've gotten more into content creation, a lot of the content I see is other musicians and other creatives. And I have seen some filmmakers that will either show part of their film as a teaser or show the concept and vibe it's about, or part of their creative process of an upcoming film. Man, I think the double edged sword of social media and of content is that you can reach anyone. That is how you reach audiences now for most things. And if you want people to know about you, you really have to be posting content. Otherwise, it's going to be your network. It's going to be your family, your friends. If you have an existing fan base, then them. But for Soft Stone Hearts, really only having our friends and family to start out as our fan base, we had to post content to find people that like pop punk, that like pop rock, that are open to blending different styles of pop and rock music together into what we hope is something fresh and innovative and fun and resonant. So once I started making content, it was actually so I started making content because our singer had quit the band. I had learned to sing so that way I could become the new frontman for Soft Stone Hearts. Jess and I switched to being a two-piece, so me on vocals and guitar and then Jess on drums. And as I stepped into that, it became a lot easier to make content because I'm the face of the band at shows. I'm the one who's singing the lyrics. So now I can sing the songs on camera. I couldn't do that if it was somebody else singing. So that made logistically that made it a lot more realistic and it just made more sense to start making content. But I also had no clue what I was doing. So I started researching other artists and seeing what they were doing that was working, what they were doing that wasn't working. But ultimately, the biggest thing is you can sit there and study content, you can sit there and study film, you can sit there and study songwriting all day,
Hmm.
every day for so long. But until you just sit down and do it, it's all just head knowledge. And you're going to learn a lot just by putting yourself out there and trying. So I didn't know anything about lighting. I didn't know anything about hooks. And to be honest, I really still don't. I've got a ton to learn. But by sitting down and just taking action, which again is how Soft Stone Hearts started. So I think the big thing I've learned from all of this is learn what you need to do to take intelligent action to start, but then just go for it. It's 80% action, 20% knowledge,
Mm.
if not more weighted towards action.
What's the next phase of music creation when it comes to doing Soft Stone Hearts as an entity that you're hoping to try to get up to? Like, what's the next level you're trying to go to?
Next level. Man, that's interesting. I don't even know if I can look at a level that we could hit and say this is my goal. I'm in love with the process. I love writing songs. I love getting into a room with a really good producer and just working I love doing shows in the community that creates. So for me, I think it's about continuing to stay true to the process and do what we're doing on the process side, but better. I want to write better songs. I want them to have better hooks. I want the instrumentation to be even tighter. I want to play better shows with higher energy. I want to think about the content I'm making and say, how can I make this more fun to watch? How
Mm.
can I make this more engaging? If I can do that, I think we'll get to the next level, whatever that is. If that means going from however many followers we have to 10xing that, if that means getting signed, if that means touring, great. If we step up what we're doing on our end and make it better and it looks completely different than those things, that's cool too. All I can control is showing up, doing my best, and trying to be better. Beyond that, our listeners could hang out at our monthly listeners on Spotify could continue to hang out at 2,000. They could get up to 100,000. I don't know. I'm not chasing that. I'm chasing trying to be better, build something people will resonate with, and then continue trying to just build community and give people something that will speak to them.
Mm. It seems like actually your section or your genre, your mix of, you know, the overall punk genre actually seems to be making a little bit of a comeback
I'm
lately.
sorry, you're going in and out. Can you start that question over? I'm sorry.
How is it now?
It's better. You were saying your genre, and then you whiffed, just broke up into pixels.
Poof.
Yep, he's back.
Um, well, it seems like to me that the punk genre, and the other mixes that come with
Mm-hmm.
it, is actually kind of making a comeback lately. Would you agree with that statement?
Tell me how you came to that conclusion. Why do you think punk is making a comeback?
Because I don't follow it really,
Mm-hmm.
but for some reason I am seeing more punk artists show up in my feed. So like I'm on the other end of the algorithm, that kind of shouldn't be getting this because I don't follow or even like anything, in that sing. Not that I don't like dislike the music or anything like that. It depends on
Oh, I'm
who's
so
making it.
offended. We can never talk again.
I mean, it's not my main go-to, but like it's like
Yeah,
I like the poppy type punk, but it's
yeah.
it's really really fun, but it does get repetitive. So like I'll listen to it like every now and then if I want like an energy boost or something like that. But I've been getting more of it in my feed for no reason that I can accurately deduce.
So
So
your
I was
thought
wondering.
is if more of it is showing up in your feed when it shouldn't, given your algorithm, the only logical conclusion is that punk must be coming back into the mainstream. So the algorithm is thinking everybody likes this right now, so you probably like it too.
That yeah, more or less that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago there was a pretty big resurgence of I want to say pop punk, whatever what it is now, a little bit more pop rock, I would say, just with my classic 2000s pop punk roots. I thought that slowed down a little bit, but with Warp Tour coming back in its new form, there may be a little bit more of a nostalgia kick there, where these classic pop punk bands are coming back. All American Rejects is doing their crazy cool house show tour.
Yeah,
They
they're
will just
doing.
play.
That was cool actually. I saw
I,
that
I,
and I'm
I
like,
I
That's
have
just fun.
thoughts. I think they're gearing up to do something big in the next year, and this is them laying the foundation to have their fan base just complete this really fan the flame, get everybody so stoked over All American Rejects. If they do a stadium tour next year, I'll go see them. I want to
Yeah.
go to one of their house shows, but I'm just not on the list, I guess. I don't know. All American Rejects, if you're seeing this, text me your next house show. I will fly, drive, I'll be there.
Well,
Hit me up.
I heard something
Also,
in
I'd
an
love to open
interview.
for you when you tour.
I did watch an interview actually because they
Yep.
were making a resurgence, lately. Um,
Yeah.
and he said that like the hardest thing as an artist actually is that when I was going to create, as I was growing up, I wanted to create, different. I wanted to tell stories through songs about different things in my life,
Yeah.
and the thing that kind of pigeonholed him a little bit was just the classic teenager like heartbreak, and all that kind of
Well,
stuff
and
that
then
he.
he only knew life on the road. So he took 10 years off of the band so that way he would have more lived life to write about, and he feels like he's in a much better spot now,
Yeah.
which is crazy. Which may be, ironically enough, an advantage right now for me creatively, where I would have told you I want to make it in music years ago, but I'm living a normal life, working, hanging out with friends, building my community, and doing all of that while also doing music on the side. So I have all of this life to write about, and I don't know what it's like to be on the road with a band touring. I don't. That's so foreign to me. So I'm just taking my experiences and then turning them into something that I can share with other people.
Mm-hmm. Well, also,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it seems like a lot of punk tends to come out of the Midwest, and I don't know why. I don't know
It's
why
because
that is.
all we have in Ohio are cornfields. You can either leave or write emo punk songs about life and cope one way or the other. And I am still in Ohio, so I have chosen to go the I'm coping through angsty music route. So I don't know, but I love music, so I'm glad that's the way that I went.
Well, I mean, I think honestly, Ohio, as far as Midwest goes, is the least Midwest state, but it has enough of it where it still qualifies as being part of the family, you know?
Yeah.
But Ohio is kind of like one of those. Honestly, it's like I'm fine with it being a joke on the internet because that means people aren't going to move to our state and ruin it because it's actually a really nice state. You know, especially if you live near the
Yeah.
metropolitan areas, you know, of like, you know, Cincinnati, Columbus, you know, Dayton, Ohio, where the Wright brothers were,
Yeah.
um, and, you know, up toward, you know, Cleveland even, then it's actually really nice. And there's a lot of really nice areas like Hocking Hills. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Some great
beautiful. Like it
hiking.
shouldn't belong in a Midwest state when you think of Midwest.
Cincinnati, Columbus, Dayton. I can't speak to Cleveland specifically, but Cincinnati, Dayton, and Columbus have really good music scenes, really solid, just creative networks of people that are working there. That's really, really cool and a huge blessing.
The local comedy
Although
scene also has boomed lately in the
that's
last
what I've
few
heard.
years.
I need to go to more comedy shows. Yeah,
They're in Columbus. They're like they've really taken off. There's a lot of shows that are
that's
going on in
awesome.
Columbus right now.
Let's do a road trip. One other thing I really want to do with Jess at some point is make some content where we show people not just our music side, but our Cincinnati, Ohioan side. Do a Skyline chili review and show all the people who have never had Cincinnati chili what they're missing. I don't know. I think that would be cool. Show some Cincinnati culture, some Ohio
Honestly, dude, you
culture.
could just read a song about that. It's like yeah, but called like "You're Missing Out,"
No, it'd be
and then
called
include
that.
as like a promo of just Skyline. It's like you're missing out on the
I
Midwest.
would call it, I would call it Emperor's New Clothes. How everybody in Cincinnati has this conspiracy that Skyline is good and it's nasty. I'm just gonna be like, no, I do not like Skyline. Sorry, guys. This is meat sauce. When I think of chili, I think of something in a bowl that you eat with a spoon. What
Hmm.
is this? It's a chili dog. It's not the same thing. But
Yeah.
I digress. I have very strong feelings on this topic, sir.
I mean, honestly, like Gold Star for the most part it's the same as Skyline. I mean,
It's the same
Skyline,
thing.
it's
Yeah.
the same thing. I mean,
Uh-huh.
Skyline's just like they have a little bit more like self respect as a business. Gold Star is like we'll put the Gold Star right next to the Waffle House, and then you know we'll just hire whoever and be like, but no, Skyline's like no, we are a premium, even though we're the exact same. So
You heard it here first, folks.
it's nicer to
So
be at Skyline, but
Skyline
like
is
it's the
Target,
same
Gold
thing as
Star is
Gold Star.
Walmart. That's what I'm hearing.
Basically, yeah, basically.
Yeah. They're not that different. They're the same thing. It's all branding.
Yeah, exactly. But then, you know, Blue Ash Chili, well, that's Target, you know.
I got you.
Yeah.
Cincinnatians will know.
Yeah,
The
we
real
know.
ones will know. Yeah.
We know. Um, well, I got one final question that I want to ask you before I say goodbye and then I miss you for the rest of the day.
Oh, buddy.
Um, oh God, where is it? It's a great question. Where the frick did it go?
I've got one for you as
You have
well.
one
I'm
for
going to
me?
totally put you on the spot. What is your favorite Soft Stone Hearts song?
I liked which one? I listened to it this morning when I was prepping for the podcast. Um, it is what it is.
That's a good
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah.
That is the one that most people would go to. It's our most popular song to
Oh,
date.
is it?
It's fun. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess our newest song is beating it out in terms of popularity over the past month since we released it.
Mhm.
But overall, it is what it is. It'll get beat out by a song after it gets released, but then it just comes back and it's our
Mhm.
top song on Spotify. And
I
streaming
found it.
services.
Um,
Yeah. All right, what you
what
got for me?
what about music makes it worth the headaches and heartbreaks?
Yeah. Again, just to go back, I think to the beginning of the podcast, music really spoke to me when I needed it when I was young and just resonated with me and gave me words to articulate feelings and things that I just didn't have the words for at the time. And being able to give that back to somebody else, whenever we get a comment saying, "Hey, we had somebody who commented on one of our posts. I was going through a panic attack at 2 a.m. and I opened up Spotify and Letting Go popped up as a new release, and that's exactly what I needed." It's like that's. I would like to think that there's a lot more people that our music is that for them, and only a few of them comment and let us know. But knowing that there are some people out there where our music is able to meet them in the moment when they need it, that's what keeps me going. That's why I got into music, and that's why I keep at it.
I love it.
Yeah,
I
man.
love it. Well, Chase, it's been great catching up with you. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
And Anthony, thanks for letting me be on your podcast. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.